We all took a moment. We sat back and said, it's happened to all of us. And Alex Nedeljkovic, we'll get into it a little bit, just what he could have done differently and how it made us feel more a part of the union. We'll get into it. It's InGoal Radio, the podcast presented by The Hockey Shop, source for Sports Langley, thehockeyshop.com. Here is David Hutchison and Kevin Woodley joining Darren Millard. Gentlemen, how are you?
So well. Outstanding. Hockey's back.
Woody,
Yes.
you must be just overjoyed with people now rolling through the Lower Mainland. You'll be able to hang out with all these visiting teams.
I'm looking forward to hopefully doing that soon. Wasn't able to out of the gate do some medical reasons that kept me away from the rink. And now actually, to be honest with you, Darren, like I thought I'd be getting the St. Louis Blues today, but they canceled their practice and they don't have a morning skate. And as excited as I was to go see new guys coming through town, I have a bad feeling that this condensed season of ours is going to prevent practices to the point where goalies don't talk on game days. It's going to be a lot harder than it has been in the past to actually sit down and have conversations. So I guess I just got to book time with them when they're on the road in their hotel.
That's a bit of a trickle-down effect with the jam-packed National Hockey League schedule during this Olympic year and more teams taking practices off or making them optional.
I wonder if it has a positive effect or has the potential in a year where I think a lot of people would be looking at the schedule and thinking nobody's going to play a ton of games as a goalie. The truth is, practice is probably one of the more prohibitive things in terms of rest for goaltenders. I wonder if having all these practice days off is going to allow guys to be fresher and play more games despite the schedule. Like, honestly, Connor Hellebuck said it at the beginning of the season on the Players Tour, talked about how he thinks 70 games is absolutely doable if teams would just figure out how not to wear out the number one guys in practice. And guess what? Practice is off all the time might be a way to do it.
You know, I knew practices were a wear and tear issue on goaltenders, but Hutch, having watched your son all the way through and into Major Junior, you can appreciate this as much as anybody. I was talking to a goalie coach from the Eastern Conference the other day, and he said that they started a couple of years ago monitoring drills, how many times goaltenders go down during the course of a practice. So they'll put a check mark beside each drill in the practice plan and go, that's a 50 up and down. That's a 30 up and down during the course of a practice. And when I thought of it that way, man, oh man, goaltenders are going through a workout during the course of practice.
I think it was Brian DeCord who first opened our eyes to that with some research they were doing about a butterfly count. And I know I've certainly heard through Steve Thompson and USA Hockey discussions of having a butterfly count on goaltenders and maybe even at some point at the lower levels of hockey, limiting the number of butterflies a kid can do in practice to try and extend their window, to try and keep them healthy and so on. So I think it's fascinating that an NHL team is doing that. I'm actually really excited and encouraged to hear that an NHL team is doing that. I would add something to it. If I was going to take the research to another level myself, I would suggest that there is a difference between a butterfly on a straight shot versus the number of open looks kids face in practice. Because a lot of coaches run a lot of no pressure, 2-on-1, 2-on-0, 3-on-0. The counts of these odd man rushes that kids face in practice, often not just odd man, but completely undefended rushes in practice, doesn't come anything close to what you actually face in a hockey game. And I would suggest that having to go full bore coast to coast to make a 2-on-0 save is a lot harder on the body than just dropping on a regular shot. So I actually think that it's magnified in practice beyond what you would ever see in a game. And it is something that we're going to need to keep an eye on. And also just ask the question, what's the return on investment on all those butterflies, so to speak? What is the kid getting out of going through that? He's doing a great job being a shooter tutor for the players and the 2-on-0s and so on. But I think back to Steve Valiquette's interview actually last week when he was talking about tying what he does in practice to the percentage of times that something happens in a game. And I would argue a lot, if not most, head coaches don't actually do that when they're constructing their practice plan, to the detriment of the goaltender's health, but probably to the detriment of the players as well.
We have a pitch count in baseball as we get into October baseball, and Hutch and I are about to engage in a bitter rivalry between the Blue Jays and the Mariners. Why
go
not
Jays.
have a pitch count? Don't get me started. Why not have a butterfly count? Like, for sure. And I do think that practice trends have evolved in the National Hockey League. I know maybe not at the lower levels, where we see at least a few less of those open-ended, useless. Frankly, I remember writing the article more than a decade ago at NHL.com for one of my unmasked columns and getting DMs from goalies all over the place. Thank God somebody said it. Things we always assumed to be true. Practice can actually be bad for you if you have too many of those. Like, it can actually form bad habits. You're trying to impress a coach, you're trying to make saves, and there's drills where they're not realistic. And then when you pull back and flip the script, is it helping the shooters to take 20 shots in a row they won't get once all season, time and space wise? So I think we've evolved a lot in this argument, but clearly there's more room to grow. And managing practices so you get the most out of your goaltenders is one of them. I'll go back to Devin Dubnyk after the trade to Minnesota. Like, it's been so long now, I can't remember exactly. Was it like something like 50 games in a row or 35 starts in a row? Like, by today's standard, it was absurd. Ask him why. Because they had Darcy Kemper and Nicholas Backstrom. They had a 3-goalie system. Doobie went on the ice early. He did his goalie-specific work. He stayed out every once in a while for a little bit to get some flow and rush drills and keep the boys happy. And then you had NHL shooters and NHL goalies, and he wasn't one of them, and he was able to maintain his game and his rest and play at a rate that nobody's played since. I still can't believe we're all these years later and nobody sort of looked at that and thought, hey, there's something here. Now, one of the challenges is NHL shooters do not want to shoot on beer league goalies. So this will be an interesting thing next year with the practice goalies, and teams already use practice goalies often. Is there an evolution here where we can get a skill level at that practice goalie that's not going to piss off the shooters, that's truly going to allow the number one to take the reps off that he needs to play like they used to play in the old days? All of 10 years ago.
That's a work in progress. But let's talk about some of the different challenges that the goalies face in games. And that's what Alex Nedeljkovic went through the other day. He had a puck that was flipped in on him by Jack Eichel, and it just took one of those hard bounces. And if you've played the game for any length of time, you've dealt with one of those. Maybe it didn't go in, but it certainly scared the heck out of you. And then followed up, I don't know whether he was trying to make up for it, but in overtime was out to the blue line to play the puck, and that didn't go right. It went off a shin pad and ends up in the back of the net. That one, everybody's done, giving the puck away. I just can't remember the last time a goalie was out to the blue line. Can you? Woody?
I don't even skate that far when we got a delayed penalty. It's too much.
And I was thinking, if it can happen to Ned, it can happen to anybody because he's really good at playing the puck.
Yeah, and I think when you look at that skip and that bounce, and we've all been there, right? Like, it is a circular object with edges on a frozen surface. It takes weird hops. It looked like maybe there was an attempt, or he was in the process of trying to get out to corral that dump in to play it with a 1-goal lead in the final minute, as opposed to just worrying about stopping it. And I haven't looked actually at the media afterwards to see what his comments were. It happens to the best of them. Obviously, the overtime going out to play the puck, and it goes off a skate and right to the other guy. Like, just didn't get it through that first forechecker. Personally, at the beer league level, I absolutely would have done a toe drag on that one. If you're gonna go down swinging. I think I've told that story on this podcast of me actually successfully pulling a toe drag off like that and then having the worst game ever afterwards. I believe it's karma. So listen, he's an exceptional puck handler on a team that is going to need exceptional puck handling to help it transition out of its own end. It's a big part of his game. I do know in Pittsburgh that they tried to mute it a little, not to take it away from him, but to recognize that there were moments where less can be more. And I wonder if that's a lesson here. But at the end of the day, it's a tough look. It's a tough ending. It's a tough bounce. But you don't, as Mike Smith always used to tell us, don't stop doing what you're doing completely. Maybe you adjust when you do it and how you do it in certain circumstances. But Ned's puck handling is another level. And listen, a lot of people have talked about San Jose and handed the crease to Askarov. Do not overlook at Alex Nedeljkovic. He was the best goalie by the numbers in Pittsburgh last year, and he won't give up that job without a fight.
And don't forget about risk reward. I mean, obviously he made the wrong decision given how it turned out, but in overtime, if you can make that quick pass, the game can be over in a hurry. Especially, it looked like he was probably trying to pull something like that off. But I just have to say that I don't know. I was of conflicted feelings when I watched it because I love watching goaltenders who like to handle the puck. It's one of my favorite parts of the game, and so I'm just excited to see him willing to take those chances. And frankly, it doesn't matter to me whether San Jose wins or loses. But I'm also the resident goalie dad, and I just felt sad. I felt like I was heartbroken for the guy because I can imagine being in the shoes of his family watching this happen, and you just don't want to see the microscope on your kid in that way. So I just felt really, really sad for him that it didn't work out.
I wonder if there's a formula where you can look at it, not in real time, but beforehand, and when you go into these situations, what are the percentages of me stopping a breakaway, and what are the percentages of me winning a race for the puck and having it come out on the right side? Like, is it, even if it's 70-30 that you're going to get to the puck, is it better to sit in the net and take the breakaway that you've experienced 1,000 times?
Yes, because what did Steve Valiquette tell us last week? Your percentage chances are in a
35?
breakaway?
Like they go in 35,
yeah,
so you got a 65% chance of success. But
yeah, so you better have at least a 70% chance of getting that puck.
Well, he did get it, right? Like he just tried to pull it back through the guy. Like if that goes another 6 inches, it's over the blue line and Vegas is offside. If he chips it off the boards, which is a tougher play on the back end, but if he chips it off the boards, it's out and he's got time to reset. He won the race. He won that. He made the right calculation there. He just didn't get it through the first.
And the backhand's not a tough.
No, exactly.
Level. I mean, these guys can do that.
I mean, hey, listen, it is what it is. I'm with Hutch, actually. I applaud it. Like I said, like we're biased. Ned's one of our favorites here. Guy chucks the puck like nobody else. He's already scored a goal in the National Hockey. He scored a goal in every level. Who the hell are we to question his decisions coming out to stop pucks?
Toronto and Carolina both picking up goaltenders to give themselves some depth.
Well, trickle down, right? Like, Domino's, better way of putting it. Joseph Woll, still not back with the Maple Leafs, and whatever's going on there, we just wish him the best. Another one of our favorites here, and a longtime sort of supporter of InGoal. So whatever's going on there, just hope that everything works out for him. But in the meantime, Toronto decides to go waiver wire fishing rather than sign James Reimer, which I thought was interesting after bringing him in on a PTO. Caden Primo was exceptional in the American Hockey League after losing the NHL job early, was really good in a small sample in the NHL in a backup role last year. Like, I don't mind taking that swing, taking that shot. I believe there's still a lot of upside for Caden Primo. Bad news for Carolina. They lose Primo, and Pyotr Kochetkov isn't healthy to start the season, so they've got to go make a claim, and Brandon Bussi ends up there. Another guy who is just a couple years removed from a whole bunch of talk here. We had him on the podcast, upside and promise, and first year as a pro in the American Hockey League was incredible. Michael DiPietro sort of took that job over in the ensuing time, but he's with, I guess, another organization and now another organization. So anytime the Panthers go and grab you, probably a pretty good sign of your upside. Carolina takes him from Florida, and let's see if he gets an opportunity to get in some games, because I would suggest that if there's one situation where you can't just be like, let's ride the number one, it's Carolina with Freddie Anderson. That guy, when he's in the net, I think people forget, has been one of the best goalies in the league statistically over the last couple of seasons. The problem is just keeping him healthy. And so obviously they need to be smart about how they handle his workload in, as we mentioned, a condensed season.
In our NHL Sense Arena feature interview, the great entertainer / former goaltender, John Garrett, will join us in just a little bit. Give us a little tidbit on what we're going to see and hear from him.
Oh, a little bit of history. Couple of shots at Darren Millard and his puck stopping ability. Some great stories. But also the thing I loved about John was, for all the character and the obvious character that came through in the broadcast and the experiences and the stories that he can tell, and he tells many of them, is he also kept up with the game. Like, he didn't just compare everybody he was covering in the modern era to the way he played. Like, he stayed on top of it. He had conversations with goalie coaches. He learned about modern goaltending, and he was able to sort of analyze that as well. So we sort of touch them all with John Garrett, who is long overdue to be our featured guest. We finally make that happen this week.
Yes. I know that you think that you know everything about goaltending, but I can tell you, There's that little John Garrett impersonation. We also have our gear segment brought to you by The Hockey Shop, source for sports Langley, thehockeyshop.com. The Warrior line celebrating a 20th anniversary.
Little swagger graphics on a Warrior V4. As soon as we saw it in store, Darren, we were just like, ooh, Kippersoft vibes all over the place. So what's it all about? What are the actual features underneath that slick paint job? Let's go see Cam, and we'll find out.
Oh, we got some swagger here today, ladies and gentlemen. We're checking out the Warrior Swagger Vintage Style Goal Sticks this week.
That is like I literally want to go stretch for 3 hours on a game day. This is giving me some serious Mikra Kippersoft vibes.
I mean,
45 minutes before morning skate, 45 minutes after morning skate, 45 minutes before the game, 45 minutes after the game added up. That's 3 hours every game day for Mika Kippersoft. But mostly, the man had style. Whether it was
he had swagger.
Whether it was the masks or the swagger sticks. So tell me, Cameron.
Well, there's definitely, I mean.
Clearly,
yes.
We've got the look.
Yes.
We've got a lot of swagger on this segment.
Oh, God.
I'm feeling it. But this is modern. Like, I got, Warriors ASG grip up top, which I'm really loving.
So what is this really?
What do I have in my hands other than one, sexy stick?
All right. So these sticks are based off of the V Series line. So this is the V4 stick. You have the V4 Senior stick, and then there's also the V4 Pro.
Okay.
In terms of availability, in terms of options. So
those are points. 2 of the 3 price points we would find in the V4 line. The only one we're missing is the Ritual.
The RTL.
Which is the highest price point.
That's correct.
Okay, so we've got the mid and the low price point options with retro graphics. That's essentially what we're looking at.
That is 100% what we were looking at. So yeah, you already called it out, the ASG shaft.
I feel like
I saw your glove in. Super nice, lightweight, but man, we were just enthralled by the graphics. So you got 3 options. You've got your Calgary Flames-esque
That's it. Don't even, it's Kipper. This is Kipper.
You got your LA Kings-esque design.
I'm feeling Jonathan Quick hoisting cups with that thing.
So now here you go, pop quiz with our Montreal design he was using.
I was actually trying to think of this, and I'm trying to think of era. I'm trying to think of timeline.
So community engagement, comment below.
Help out the old guy, folks.
Yes, exactly.
He struggles to remember what he had for breakfast.
That's fine. So do I some days. 3 different designs, 2 different price points, junior, intermediate, senior available in terms of for sizing curve. So again, wide swath as options. So for those of you that are wanting to relive some of your glory days with those swagger, which I had, I had 10 of these that I would cycle through.
The sort of the wood,
it just looks great.
Around the edges, that look, that feel. Now, I mean, the one interesting part is, there's paint added on here.
Correct.
And so it does feel at times like it might feel a little heavier. We haven't weighed it, but that's just the one caveat, folks. The one caveat. It's still an incredibly light stick.
So without scratching that rabbit hole surface down too much, yes, I mean, this is extra paint added to a stick in theory.
Well, and they're so light these days that if you add layers of paint, you're adding weight.
However, Warriors V-Series sticks were already painted anyway. They didn't have exposed carbon, so this still does actually come out to the same weight as your standard V-Series.
Really?
That's correct.
Even in the blade?
Even in the blade.
I'm going to have to go check, Cameron. I don't trust you.
So, only one curve. Twist. Standard. Same as a P31 in a Bauer.
Who would trust a guy that describes this stick as Calgary Flames and not Mika Kippersoft?
Oh, Mika Kippersoft.
All credibility lost.
Oh, okay.
Give them your number just in case. You are actually pretty good at answering questions.
589-8299 or 1-800-567-7790. Or check us out at thehockeyshop.com.
And remember, hit up the comments and let us know which Montreal goaltender made this look famous.
I bet it's cool being around the hockey shop when something like that comes out, and then Cam and company get to tell all the newbies, back in the day, this was the greatest thing in the world. This reminds me of Mika Kippersoft. You wouldn't remember him, but he was outstanding. You get to be a little bit of a dad moment.
I think, I can't remember if it was Cam or Jono. One of them was the only thing missing on this stick is the made in Finland. Right, because remember those Warrior swaggers with the famous for the Finnish wood and how Warrior was having them still made. Now, what was that? Wasn't that It's a former defenseman that owned the company. Now I'm brain cramping, Darren. I've taken too many pucks to the head. Those old goalie sticks in the Swagger line was Warrior purchased that from a former NHL defenseman's company. And what was it? Much like the question we asked in the video about which Montreal Canadian used the stick. And by the way, the colors on that one would also work for the New York Rangers. Now I'm starting to wonder. I don't trust my own memory. It's terrible, but it's a great stick. And you know what they've got at the Hockey Shop Source for Sports right now? A whole bunch of them. We did the CCM Vision last week. They've got a rack full of pro returns from multiple companies, all the greatest from Bauer, the new sticks from Warrior, whether it's the V4 line right up to Ritual or these new Swagger looks. They've got it all at the Hockey Shop Source for Sports, and they've got new stuff coming in pretty much every week, it seems. So even though the normal launch season is in the spring, there's still new stuff coming in the fall. Make sure you check out thehockeyshop.com on an almost daily basis, like Darren does, to see what's new. And for our American friends, it's Thanksgiving in Canada right now, which means Thanksgiving sale from our Canadian friends at thehockeyshop.com, up to 50% off. Make sure you check it out today.
Accessories. That's where I go to first, and then I bounce around everywhere else. I love my accessories. Just looking at different things, because I can pop in, grab something, pop out. I don't have the cash like you guys to be looking at pads every week, but the accessories make me feel rich and into it. Oh, that got Hutch's attention. ProReads brought to us by Vizual Edge, one of the great aspects of InGoal Mag and InGoalMag.com. It offers you a little insight into what's happening from an NHL goaltender point of view. It's a video session with a professional goaltender.
It is. And we've got one of the hottest young professional goaltenders up in this week's ProReads presented by Vizual Edge. That would be one Dustin Wolf. And after watching his season debut against the Edmonton Oilers, I regret only that I did not go to the shootout breakaway portion of our video session with Dustin Wolf, because watching him hold edges from a low wide stance and basically make dekes irrelevant was quite enjoyable. But we've got a great session with Wolf where he walks through thought process on rebound recovery. And there's sort of one staple for him every time. And it's interesting because we talk about reads and situations and playing different things depending on what those different situations look like, both in terms of where the offensive players are positioned, what hand they are, and what your defense is doing. But for Dustin Wolf, it really gets back to his system and his belief in it. And so it's a great video example of just how deeply rooted that is and why it works for him. So make sure you check that out at InGoalMag.com. And while you're there, if you're a subscriber to InGoal Premium, did you know you get 20% off on Vizual Edge, our sponsor for ProReads? Vizual Edge is a perfect sponsor for the ProReads segment because ProReads is all about helping you see the game better, and Vizual Edge will help you see everything better. Just ask Jordan Binnington. He said that Vizual Edge has added a quality element in his preparation as a goaltender. I use the game day drills every game before heading to the rink. It's a combination of recognition, reaction, and focus that activates my brain and eyes to feel ready for what's to come. Speaking of eyes, I was having a little trouble reading that, boys. So it's a perfect partnership. Use the code InGoal. You get 10% off on Vizual Edge. It really is a game-changing tool. It's not even a tool. It's sort of a must-have. If you're not improving your eyes, you're probably falling behind. And you can do that at a discount, 10% Vizual Edge using the code InGoal. Or if you're an InGoal subscriber, check out the ProReads at InGoalMag.com. And you will see the 20% discount code if you're a member. Vizual Edge and ProReads, no better way to see and read the game better.
Okay, the low wide stance on the shootouts, I would feel vulnerable 5-hole there. Why does he be able to just push that aside?
Because his knees are like 2 inches from the ice with his feet like 2 feet outside his hips, and he's still holding his edges. Like at the end of the day, he's actually so close to the ice in that stance that along the ice is not exposed much at all. And his ability to hold, it's all about his ability to hold edges from that wide stance. It really is unreal. His goalie coach, longtime junior goalie coach, James Jensen, actually sent us a text after that shootout talking about, he believes it's largely tied to the true skates he wears and the way he's got them set up to sort of be able to hold his edges like that. And which kind of surprised me a little bit because it's such a stiff boot. You wouldn't think you'd have that ankle flexion in it. But Wolfie's got it dialed in. And hey, like at 6 foot, he's got shorter hinges, shorter levers than a lot of the long goalies with longer legs that maybe have sometimes run into knee, ankle, and hip issues using those skates. But for Wolf, it's not a problem. So it's really remarkable to watch. It's a little bit of a tough one for ProReads because you're like, okay, do this, like emulate that. And like you'd probably have to take me off the ice in a wheelbarrow if I tried to do that. Like my whole lower body would just shatter into a million pieces. So it's the degree to which he does it is remarkable in an era where we talk about narrow stance and managing depths. And obviously on a breakaway, you've got to widen out at some point. His ability to do it to the nth degree without giving up an edge. Even in that, if you guys watched that shootout, it was 8 rounds. Like the Leon Draisaitl goal that beats him was a deke. It was like a double move both ways, and it was an insane move. And most goalies, heck, I would have been in the corner with the first push. Most goalies, there's no way they're holding on to that second edge. He actually drops that leg and still manages to recapture it and push back, just not quite enough to beat Draisaitl to the post. It's insane.
I bet you I watched it 5 times to see how he got the second edge on it to be able to get that leg back.
Yeah, I actually think my knee started hurting just watching that.
The other thing that's interesting about this is just raising discussion. Darren, you brought up the question of being vulnerable 5-hole. And I think it's worth saying that what you choose to do out there is give and take. And he's decided that being a little bit wider is helpful. I love Woody talking about saying making dekes irrelevant. Wow, what a marketing line that would be on the Dustin Wolf way of playing goal. But there's give and take. So he's creating an advantage for himself in one situation. And maybe, okay, I agree, Kevin, he's a lot closer to the ice, but maybe you do give up a little something in the middle as a result. And I think it's worth people acknowledging that that's something we're doing all the time. There's a lot of people in the game of hockey that still say any goal that beats you 5-hole is a bad goal automatically. Well, is it? Is it? Because there's some give and take. He's created a situation where he's less likely to give up a goal somewhere else. Okay, so one goes in the 5-hole. If you insist that you can't give up a goal 5-hole, you're going to have every kid just sitting in a butterfly getting walked around. And I think that's what makes the position interesting, if we can get away from absolutes and talk about different ways of doing things.
I thought it was interesting that Darren talked about 5-hole because to me, when you get that wide and as a 6-footer, I think the most common knee-jerk reaction would be, what are you giving up upstairs? But the way he times his retreats and doesn't get that wide until it's in tight is also part of this process. And as I said, based on this discussion, we might have to go back to Dustin Wolf for another ProReads. I might need to dig out the actual shootout ProReads that I did with him. We've had a lot of Dustin Wolf on the site lately, but this might be worth revisiting this week just because he walks us through that process. And again, there's a balance to it. Everything balanced. It can't just be one or the t'other.
Hutch, I have one simple reaction when somebody scores at me between the legs. Who shoots there?
More and more guys. You see a lot of shootout goals.
I say them all the time. I say them all the time. Like, who shoots there? Like, pick a corner, you guys.
Darren sounds like me when the guy comes in on like a 2-on-0 and he shoots, and you're like, and he's like totally like riding the stick down the ice, celebrating. You're just like, who shoots on that? Who shoots on that?
That's my other reaction. Selfish. They love skating with me. Did you see the Dustin Wolf play where it went off the net up in the air off his body?
Oh yes,
and in,
talk about heartbreaking.
Shootout. Like
that was preseason, doesn't count.
I know, but it shows you the total unpredictability of the game.
There is randomness in everything.
Hard rubber object frozen with edges on a icy surface. It's gonna bounce.
Our friends at Stop It Goaltending, the app, I'm presenting the parent segment.
Lots of good stuff before we get to the segment, which is also good stuff. over from our friends at Stop It Goaltending You, the app. The daily primers this week talk about effective communication. We hear a lot about communication, right? The importance of it. But how do you do it effectively? Talking for the sake of talking, you might as well have a podcast and be named Woody. They walk you through ways to be effective in your communication. They've also got a quick video where Harvard goalie coach Brian Robinson goes over RVH integrations and technique. Their full video analyze what makes Darcy Kemper's game so successful. We're taking a look at some of the saves he made, and their drill of the week transition from a backdoor play to a slot shot, which is increasingly, as we heard from Valaket last week, the type of thing that teams are looking to do at all levels. Get you moving in and out of your posts and then exploit you with low-high, keep you trapped down on the goal line. How do you battle that? There's a great drill at the Stop It Goaltending You app. When we take a look at Stop It Goaltending You, the app, we think of Brian Decord. We think of Joey Decord, who, by the way, is off to a hell of a start with the Seattle Kraken once again. And we think about all that experience rolled into your phone or your tablet and the ability to access it at any time. You get all of it. All of these things that I just described are delivered new ones each week, as well as a subscription to InGoal Magazine Premium, InGoal Mag, and Stop It Goaltending You, the app. No better combination in the world of goaltending to help you get better. Make sure you check it out on the App Store, Google Drive, wherever you download apps, and get Stop It Goaltending You, the app today.
We should have a little counter when he pokes fun at himself.
Ding!
Self-deprecating.
Mm-hmm. It's not good mindset, Woody.
It's not, and it'd be a lot of it. A lot of dings going on.
All roads lead to beer league, boys. It's the mindset I need for the job I have.
I think we're going to bring Pete Fry in one day as a guest, and he can just do a counseling session with Woody.
We should do that on an episode. And I'm not even joking. It would be cool to hear Pete
just interject every time I rip myself.
Yeah, jump in and talk about it.
Well, Woody often uses the phrase, show me, don't tell me. So let's get Pete in to show us how it's done.
I'm in. Take it away, Hutch.
Gentlemen, we often hear that we should focus on the process and not on the results. And any parent who's had a child playing for a team that loses a lot of games, I mean the kind where it doesn't matter whether it's their kid in net or Connor Hellebuck, they're probably still losing, has probably figured this out. But what does this really mean for you as a goalie parent? We've talked here before about praising hard work, about catching kids being good, about noticing when they apply something they've learned from their goalie coach. Yet often that all goes out the window after a loss. Kids inevitably tie their losses to their performance, and they can't find a way to separate the two. And sadly, many take it even further and start tying that performance to their self-worth. We've all heard kids say, another loss, I suck. For a parent, that can be heartbreaking. So today I want to share a practical example of how you can try talking to your goaltender after a tough loss, the kind that leaves them questioning themselves. It's just one approach, but it can help build a framework for separating performance from outcome. So here's a real conversation. I spoke with a goaltender who had similar results in the box score in a couple of recent games. One was 4 goals against in a loss. One was 4 goals against in a win. After the win, they were really happy because, let's face it, winning feels good. After the loss, they were devastated, saying something along the lines of, if I'd only stopped that one in the second period, we'd have won. Technically, it's true and perfectly understandable. There's nothing wrong with being competitive. But it's important that we don't let the scoreboard dictate how we judge our performance. As parents, we often try to comfort them, of course. Well, you didn't have that much support. The other team was really strong. They had lots of grade A chances. But when they're upset, those words rarely help. So comfort them, give them a hug, but give it some time before trying to reason. And then try this question. If your team had scored a couple more goals and you'd won, would you feel differently about your performance? The answer is something like, well, of course, when we win, everybody's happy. And yeah, as a parent, you'd probably feel better too, because when they're happy, we're happy. But this is where reflection matters. Ask them to think about their performance again, imagining their team had scored those extra goals and they'd gotten the win. How do they feel about how they played, regardless of the score? And you might hear something along the lines of, well, I did a lot well today. My positioning was good. I controlled my rebounds. I've been working in practice on battling for loose pucks, and I thought that went well. That second period goal still stings, but the other 3 were deflections or tough screens. Yeah, tough game, but I'm only really unhappy with one of them. So I guess it was pretty solid overall. Now, at that point, you can acknowledge that losing isn't fun, but it's not all on them. In fact, that game sounds like progress. A mistake or two, sure, but also clear steps forward on the things they've been working on with their coach. That's development. That's growth. You can help them see that they're a better goalie today than they were a week ago, despite the loss. Now, I'm not saying every post-loss conversation will go this smoothly. Competitive kids don't like losing, no matter how you frame it. And there's still going to be some tough games where they're unhappy and they really didn't play as well as they might have expected. But even then, this conversation reinforces the point. It's a team game and their performance is only one part of it. If their team had scored a few more, it's a win. Same performance, different outcome. And yeah, sure, it works both ways. The sharp-eyed parent in the crowd might realize that you could say something like, well, what if your team hadn't scored 6 goals? But don't. Let them be happy. Let them build confidence. They already know where they made mistakes, and this win reminds them that their teammates have their back. When they reach junior, they're going to have coaches who break down every detail, but until then, let them enjoy the game. Try a few of these what-if conversations. Try your own version of a what-if conversation after a loss. And over time, they might start to understand that their performance and the result of the game are not always the same thing. And that's a lesson that lasts well beyond the rink. If you've tried something along these lines, or if you have thoughts about this, let me know. parents@ingoalmag.com.
Do you guys judge your performances on saves made, good chances stopped, or goals allowed, and whether they were good goals or not? In the sense of, you can make 4 great saves, but if you let in a stinker, do you feel crappy about your game?
I think there's some ratio there, and it's probably different for everybody. It's not 1-to-1. It's not one good save makes up for a tough goal, and it is absolutely only natural to focus on the mistakes. But I still don't think we should tie them to the results. Heck, in beer league, that probably goes double.
Well, you know what? It's funny, like, not beer league because I don't play that anymore, but like my Monday night hockey skate, which has a bunch of guys that are way over my head. A lot of them are younger too, so they're under my age and over my head. But I'm with you, Darren. Like, you can make a couple good ones, and then if you let a couple in that you think you should have. But what's interesting is the conversations afterwards in the room. Like, these are great guys, and they talk about it, and they can see if you're a little upset, and it's like, they're quite honest. Like, they'll tell me when I'm on or when I'm off. And there's nights where I'm off and they're like, holy, like, what are you talking about? There's like 10 bell saves all over the place. And all that I'm thinking about in my mind is the winning goal, because we do play to 5 and it keeps it competitive. Because frankly, if there wasn't a back check with this skill level, I'd be screwed. And the open look from the top of, from around the dots that I think I should have patience on, that goes over the shoulder. I'm mad about that. And they're like, so it's the what if, like, sometimes the perspective of the other people shows you it's not as bad as you think. Now, interestingly enough, my last game, I left there. I said to the other goalie, I'm like, man, just felt like I couldn't see it tonight. And then the next morning I found out, your eyes don't work anymore. You couldn't see it. So yeah, that was kind of a reassuring visit to the doctor, even if the other part of it wasn't so good.
But you are getting better, right?
Just to explain to the listeners, Kevin Woodley does have a problem with his eyes right now. He is recording this podcast in the dark wearing sunglasses, which makes for a really interesting view for all of us. I wish this was on YouTube.
We have to start putting it on YouTube. It's called a corneal ulcer, and it's a lot less scary than it sounds, and so it should get better with some time. But yeah, it was so funny because I was like, and that's why I missed the home opener for the Canucks, because this is not a look I would recommend going to an NHL game with. But it was funny because I literally said to the guy, I'm just not seeing it well tonight. I thought my tracking habits were off. I thought maybe I was pulling off the puck. I wasn't watching it. And I'm like, the next morning, it's like, no, your eyes don't work anymore. You're done.
To Hutch's point of view, losses do stink, though.
Oh, hate it.
It's hard to define the positive.
Well,
in that.
And maybe that's what I was trying to say is there's been nights at that skate, as irrelevant as it is, it's just about a sweat and a good time. And yeah, there's a competitive element where you lose the final game and you feel like you just sucked, and you get perspective of the guys who've been trying to score on you all night, and they're like, no, that was one of your better ones. Then, well, that might be saying something too, but you know what I mean? Like, it's that same thing. I was trying to point out that perspective is quite different. And sometimes it's hard within that loss to find that perspective.
And what I didn't say that maybe I should have is this isn't just about consoling your child and making them feel better if they've had a good performance in a loss. This is a really important developmental step for any athlete, to be able to assess your performance independent of the results so that you can then take steps forward. It's otherwise, if you, and I'll take the other side of this, where your team scores a few goals maybe they shouldn't, and you get a win that maybe you didn't quote unquote deserve. If you just walk away feeling like everything's great and you've had a wonderful night, you've lost an opportunity to learn something. And so in either case, you need to take the opportunity to learn something. I still want to underline, parents, don't be sitting your kid down and tell them you got to win, but you stunk. Like that's not our approach to anything around here. But do take the opportunity to learn when things happen, because sometimes that loss and the disappointment afterwards, not sometimes, often can overshadow the experience you've had in the game and the opportunity to take something away. Like I talked about in this sort of hypothetical example, here's a goaltender that's been working on something in practice. They brought it into the game. They did really well. It's important to acknowledge that work was well done and that they've taken a step forward, and they're now a better goalie than they were the week before.
Well said.
If you are going to sit down your kid and tell them they stink, can you record it for us?
So that we can use it with the Woody self-deprecation.
Yes.
Is there a way to put an asterisk on what Darren says? I don't know how you put an asterisk in the radio.
Once again, we need to get on YouTube.
we do.
Darren Bullard's opinions do not necessarily reflect the policy or opinions of InGoal magazine.
We just have Pete pop up in the corner every time.
That would actually be really funny.
That would be outstanding.
Here's how I would handle what Darren just said.
Record scratch.
NHL Sensorita brings us our feature interview every week. John Garrett standing by as we bring you a message from NHL Sensorita.
Yeah, well, we just talked about process over results, and NHL Sensorita is a great place where you can do just that. Sure, there are results. There's metrics on how well you tracked a puck, your reaction time, and so forth. In fact, there's metrics that you'll never get on the ice. So what a great tool it is. But those results are independent of how the team is playing in front of you, and they're just for you. But more importantly, you can follow a process that leads to improvement, a process that's guided by experts. Decide that you will do 15 minutes of training with Sensorita every day, and at the end of the year, you will have done more than 90 hours of training that other goalies are not doing. You can spend that time going through their guided goalie advancement program, and you're following a process step by step towards becoming a better goalie. Or follow one of the many training plans included where professional goalies and coaches guide you through your training to help you each day on the road to becoming a better goalie. If you haven't seen it for yourself yet, head over to ingoalmag.com and check out Kevin Woodley's very thorough reviews. You'll see NHL Sensorita isn't a toy, it's a serious training tool that will help you become a better goaltender. How serious? Well, Joey Daccord of the Seattle Kraken uses it as part of his training and has even used it in between periods in NHL games. Head over to Sensorita.com today and use the code IGM50 to save even more as you try NHL Sensorita.
I will add, sorry, Hutch, not trying to be that guy.
You just have to.
I have to. Well, this time it's important. We've only got a couple more days. October 15th is when that 50% off sale will be ending. So for only a couple more days, 50% off on NHL Sensorita. Check out the website for more details and still get your IGM 50 for an additional $50 on top of the 50%.
Woody, take us over to Cheech.
What more can I say? Like this, they're legend, entertaining broadcaster, passionate broadcaster, student of the position, came up in an era that many of us won't understand, playing a game where shots off the mask, when he eventually got one, could leave you with a broken nose, where shots off the body would leave you with a bruise. We talk about the evolution of position, the evolution of the equipment, We talk about hot dogs being stuffed into that equipment while backing up other goalies and ending up with hot dogs in your gear after getting put into the game. Surprisingly, we talk about everything with John Garrett, the man they know as Cheech. We did not get into ketchup on pizza. I'll leave that for another episode, but I'm sure regardless, everybody will enjoy this one. I had a great time doing the interview, and make sure you stick around to the end for a couple digs at Darren. Really excited to welcome to the InGoal Radio podcast, someone I've had the absolute pleasure to get to know a little bit on the media side. I played 7 years in the WHA.
6 years. 6 years in the WHA.
And then
7
another
years
7 in the NHL. So it's like,
there you go.
Too many pucks off the head. He's already correcting me. I'm the young guy. I didn't wear the masks that would break your nose, and I still can't keep it straight. I've got everything upside down.
Oh, I know.
John Garrett, great to have you on the show. I enjoyed many of our conversations over the years around the press box, and now I get to bring some of those to our audience. Just fantastic to have you. Thanks. And still doing broadcasting, working with Hockey Night in Canada and the Sportsnet crew. Maybe catch us up a little bit on sort of how that schedule's changed over the past couple of years for you.
Well, it got to the point where I kept looking at my birth certificate and it said 1951. The Canuck schedule was really busy. The last couple of years I was doing over 80 games and then playoffs too. And it got to be a grind. It wasn't as much fun as it was. It's still fun. And I'm doing maybe 10 games a year now. And just weekends and Saturday nights, and usually the second games of the doubleheader. And so it keeps me involved. It makes me pay attention to the league and what's going on. And it just evolved that it was time. And unfortunately, I left and the Canucks went right in the tank the next year. So
it's your fault.
Yeah, that's it. It's my fault.
Your career starts in the 70s, spans through the 80s playing, and now as an announcer, like you've seen this evolution of the game, had a front row seat, the position in particular. So I want to get into all of that, but let's start with where it started for you. Growing up in Trenton, Ontario.
Yes.
How did John Garrett become a goalie? This is a different era back then.
It was. And I don't think people realize, it's even then it was kind of a rich kid sport, especially for a goalie. We used to go, I played in Trenton, Ontario, grew up there. And you'd go down on Saturday mornings and there'd be a bin with the goalie equipment in it. And it had padlock on it. And the guy would be there and he'd open it up for, it depended what group you were in, tights and they were called squirts when I was there, and peewees and bantams. And you'd go and you get there early enough so that you got pads that weren't the same legs and gloves that were on the right hands and things like that. And you played just one goalie. That was it. Who wants to be the goalie today? And you were the goalie. And if you played on the rep team, a lot of times there was only one goalie. And you played all the games. And so that was good and bad. You got, no matter how the game was going, you had to stay in. And then as I progressed, and I'm that old that I started with no face mask.
I was going to say, different game back then too.
Yeah, we had the little leather helmets that just, covered your temple. And then I got into the clear shield that was always fogging up. And then the form-fitting masks that weren't so form-fitting. And I remember the team doctor in Peterborough was the first form-fitting mask that I had made. All the rest were you bought at Canadian Tire and they were just plastic and just fit on your face. And the form-fitting mask in Peterborough, the team doctor made it, and but it fit right to your face. It was great for visuals. You could see, no matter where the puck was, you could see it down, up, no blind spots at all. But every time you got hit, it was like getting punched. It fit so tight to your face, and wham! And you think of how many concussions. And back then, it was, who cares? Smelling salts, you know where you are. Yeah, I'm in a rink. Yeah, keep playing, and away you go. And broke my nose in junior just because the mask was fitted right tight to my nose, and a guy hits you from the side and your nose shifts. And I remember the doctor coming in, he puts his two thumbs up against my nose and he goes, oh yeah, it's broken. No kidding. No kidding. It's broken. But then I played junior in Peterborough, got drafted by St. Louis. St. Louis just had finished Glenn Hall, and Jacques Plante and Ernie Wakely was still there. And so I went to St. Louis, 13 goalies in training camp. And you watch now, there's 5 or 6 in training. We had our own dressing room.
13.
And, but it was a 6-week training camp.
Right.
And guys would come in, the guys who had contracts. And I remember my first training camp, a guy named Noel Picard was there in St. Louis, a defenseman, great big defenseman. And he had played the year before, played very well. And so he had a contract. He comes in, he's 40 pounds overweight. But he had 6 weeks to get ready. And they knew, I've got a contract and I'm going to be on the team. So, and he was ready by the time the season started. But so played in the Central League. St. Louis, at the time, there was a Central League and the Western League. The Central League was the younger players. The Western League was the older players. And St. Louis had their farm team in Kansas City. And I was in Kansas City with the Kansas City Blues in the Central League. And the next year during training camp with the Blues, I got traded to Chicago. And Chicago had Tony Esposito and Gary Smith. And here I am, my second year pro. And what are your chances? Well, not very good. And they had a team in Dallas, and they had goalies that were there already, Michel Dumas and a couple other guys. And so they sent me to the Western League, to Portland, because they had a working agreement with them. Went to Portland, played in the Western League. So this is where I get to play in every league in the world. And about Christmas time, just before Christmas, I'm in Portland, and because they're a privately owned team, there was only 2 players from Chicago there, myself and Bill Orban, forward, and played in the NHL for a while. A real nice guy, but they decided they were going to use their own goalie 3 games in a row. And that Chicago didn't like that one little bit. I get a call, and Tommy Ivan phones and says, well, we're not going to tolerate that. We're going to bring you back. So they brought me back, but to Trenton. They said, well, why don't you go home? It's right at Christmas time. Why don't you go home and we'll find a place for you to play? And I'm thinking, oh man, Portland back to Ontario, driving, and we moved all our stuff. And first year we were married, my wife and I, who have been married 53 years now. It was surprise. And we get the call. And it's, I think it's December 20th or something. And so we got to pack up, and I drive and she flies. And I remember her taking the Christmas tree, takes the decorations off. We lived on the second floor of this apartment building. She threw the Christmas tree off the deck, trying to, welcome to professional hockey. And then she got stuck in Chicago, and I almost made it home before she did, and I was driving. But anyway, they found a place. I played in Richmond in the American League. So now I'm 3 leagues already. And Ronnie Wilson's dad is the coach, Larry Wilson. Just a great guy. Another one of those guys that had a heart attack while he was out running, just a proof that you don't have to be in great shape all the time. Real nice guy, great coach. He played me all the time. And so I'm in Richmond and get called up to Chicago for the playoffs. And they're talking to me about contract for the next year. But they still got Tony Esposito and Gary Smith. And they're offering me $16,000 to play in the NHL, $18,000 for the second year playing in the NHL. And the WHA had 1 year under its belt, and Bobby Hull, and it was starting to get established as the Rebel League and all this kind of stuff. And I'd been drafted by Minnesota. They came along and offered me a $20,000 signing bonus, $35,000 for the first year and $45,000 for the second year.
No brainer.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I think, what happened to a lot of the players who signed in the WHA. It was the NHL was so arrogant that, well, you're not going to play in that league. that league will never last. And, some of the teams I played on, the Minnesota Folding Saints and the Toronto Toros moved to Birmingham, and all these stories from the WHA. But it was a no-brainer at the time. And you look at the 4 teams that made it, merged with the NHL, and you look at all those great players that had the opportunity to play in the WHA, Gretzky and Messier and Mike Gartner and Michel Goulet and Rick Five, and, Gaston Gingras, all the young 18-year-olds, Kenny Linsman, Rod Langway, that had a chance to play and could have played in the NHL, but because they weren't drafting until you were 20, they were stuck. And so the WHA afforded them the opportunity of a real competitive league and high quality, especially towards the end. And then look at how long it took the Oilers to be a dynasty. Yeah. Within 79-80 was the first year, and what was their first cup? 84-85? Somewhere in there. And then Colorado wins, and Carolina wins, and all the teams that merged have won Stanley Cups. And I think that's a testament to how good the WHA was evolved towards the end.
Now, throughout all that, like some of the names you mentioned, I mean, obviously legends like Esposito and stuff. What were you walk into a training camp with 13 goalies. Is there any opportunity to build relationships, to learn from these guys? Is there goalie? I know we're in an era now where every 8-year-old's got a private goalie coach, and it was far from that back then. But is there any advice, or are you just out there on your own figuring it out?
No, there wasn't. You were out there on your own figuring it out. And you watch the guys play, and I grew up trying to pattern myself after Rogie Vachon. Little goalie, and back in the stand-up era, cut down the angles, that sort of game. And I thought, well, okay, I'm his size exactly, and I can play like that. And you'd watch him, and then you'd watch a guy like Roger Crozier and Bauer and Jacques Plante and those guys, and you'd watch them and try and pick up the best that they had, and how they handled themselves around the net and in the net, and angles and rebounds. Johnny Bauer, the poke check, and you pick up the best qualities of each goaltender, but you had to do it on yourself. You're right. There was absolutely no instruction or advice. I remember going to Chicago. They called me up for the playoffs after I played in Richmond, designated target for the playoffs when Tony and Gary would take the practices up, and Gary Smith and I ended up being roommates. And I'm sure you've met Gary a few times, and what a great guy he is. And I remember Tony taking me aside, and he goes, "What are you and Smitty doing? How come you're hanging around him? He's taking your job." And that was Tony's attitude was, and if you were the other goalie, it wasn't a team. I always looked on it as, if the other goalie does well, then nobody will bug you. And if you do well, then nobody's going to bug him. So it's kind of a mutual admiration society, and nobody else knows what you're going through except the other goalie. And Tony, it was, so he's taking your job. You can't hang around him and don't talk to him. And I thought, oh man. And Tony was different anyway, but I thought, what an attitude to have, and what an attitude if you were his partner. It was it was an eye opener for me to think that. And Tony was such a great goalie and such a fierce competitor. I get where he's coming from, but that's a tough road to hoe. And as you know, goaltending is really a tough position. It's an individual position on a team sport, and now they have the psychologists and performance guys, and how many goalie coaches? Each team has 2 or 3 goalie coaches, one for the NHL, an organization goalie coach, and then another goalie coach, usually a goalie scout or something. And back then there was nobody except the other goalie. And you think now mental health and, you have to be crazy to be goalie. It's kind of a legit statement, because it is such a pressure-packed position to play, and you have to have thick skin for sure, because you're either great or it's your fault. You don't talk about the ones you stop. It's the ones that go in. You can have, I remember Stuart Skinner, the first year the Oilers were in the finals and lost, and he let in a wrist shot from, and they lose 2-1 or whatever it was in Game 7. It was one of those games that, and it wasn't a great goal, but that ended up being the game winner. And what did everybody talk about? Well, they talked about that wrist shot that beat him from the face-off dots. And I thought, well, isn't that just typical of the position? Is that you're great, and Skinner still is, people question, and he's been to the Stanley Cup Finals twice. And the Oilers need a goalie.
And it's funny because the more things change, like all the support that's there for the goalies, the more they stay the same. We still wear the goat horns, and sometimes fairly, sometimes unfairly. The understanding around the position in many ways hasn't evolved all that much. It has amongst the inner circle and the people studying it, but like in the general, like right up to general managers will admit, like how many times do we hear GMs and coaches? Well, the goalie coach will handle that. I don't fully understand that. Like that level of ignorance towards it. I love that you always kept studying it and stayed on top of it when you switched over to announcing. Like when you look at and we'll get back to the WHA and the transition back to the NHL in a bit, but as you've seen it evolve, like where do you think it's at now? Are there things you watch and still shake your head at a little bit without having to, call anyone out?
Well, I like the fact that Dustin Wolf had such a great year last year, and UC Saros has established himself as one of the elite guys. That you don't have to be 6'5", 6'6", and cover 3/4 of the net and wear oversized equipment and just block. You can be an athlete and you can be a reactionary goaltender and not just be a guy that goes side to side and just blocks. And I think that's one of the things now that I'm hoping. And I still think that the league is going to have to clamp down on the equipment again. And it's nice that now none of the goalies get hurt with shots. Nobody, mask or arm pads, or, you might get hit in the top of the knee maybe once or twice a year. But it's not like it used to be where the guys were flinching or pulling up because you get hurt with shots. Now the equipment is so good, so light, and the goalies are so conditioned. Everybody's in great shape. So it bothers me, but here's again, as you were saying, it's why can't goalies play 65, 70 games again? Like Grant Fuhrer did that one year, 72 games or whatever, and then got hurt in the playoffs. Why can't they play back-to-back nights? If you're in playing the Rangers one night and you're playing the Devils the next night, you look at 20 shots against the Rangers and you're playing, why can't you play the next night? Okay, it's the mental part of the game, and it's not the physical part. And the coaches think, okay, I can't use them, I can't burn them out. And well, why? And that's, to me, is like you say, the general managers and the coaches. And you go to the goalie coaches, and Andy Moga is one of my favorites. Bill Ranford is one of my favorites. The guys who have been there themselves, who know the pressure and what the goalie's thinking. And Ian Clark is one of the best goalie coaches there is. But I remember Ian telling me one time that I can get Dan Cloutier so conditioned that in the playoffs it won't matter, that he will. It'll just be all muscle reaction and muscle memory, and he won't have to think about it. Well, you think about it. And that's where a guy like Ian, who is a master at the craft, but that's one of the, and I'm sure that you look at Winnipeg and how Connor Hellebuck plays, and their goalie coach is one of my favorites too, and great guy, and he's played the game. And I talked to him about it, and he said, Connor is so wound up and he wants to succeed so much in every game. In the regular season, he is absolutely lights out. But then you get to the playoffs, and he wants to do more. And it's hard to convince the goalie, and even guys that have played before, how do you get inside their head and say, hey, Connor, just be yourself. You don't have to be that much better. You're the best there is. And you watch him in the playoffs, and I think, oh, man, Connor, settle down. You remember Rick Tabaracci. Rick Tabaracci is another guy that was in Winnipeg and played really well. Come playoff time, and he was just a basket case. And Dan Cluche was another guy that just he gets so wound up for the playoffs, and shot from the red line goes in. Come on,
you can't. It's funny because, like, again, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Like, you can't try harder.
No,
as a goalie, like you can't like. And
convince yourself that you can't try harder. Convince yourself that you can't be that, I'll just be that much better. I'm the Vezina Trophy winner every year, but I can be that much better in our team no matter what they do. I can make the difference. And as you know, goaltending is the only position on the team where you can make a difference every night. You can, you might 0-0 tie, but you're the guy. You can make the difference every night. And that's what I used to tell the kids at hockey schools, and that, you take the goalies aside and you say, okay, you are the only guy on the team that can make a difference every night. Sure, Gretzky goes up and scores 5. Okay, he's going to make a difference, but the other team might get 7. But if you don't let any in, you can make the difference every night.
Do you think we have to embrace that? Like, you think that's part of what goes into it? Like embracing that from an early age, that wanting that as opposed to being scared of it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you look at the guys who have been successful, and the Marty Brodeurs and Patrick Waz, and all the guys who have been Vasilevsky gets the playoffs, and you can count on one hand. When's the last time Vasilevsky or Bobrovsky lets in a bad goal in the playoffs? And you play 4 rounds, and every year it's the same thing. That's why, Sorokin and Shesterkin and those guys, and you think, well, okay, they're not quite there. They're not at that level. And I think it's just they don't have that belief that they're going to make the difference every night.
Is that just purely innate, or just comes with experience, comes with time? Like, we talked about coaching and psychology and all that. Can that be learned? Can that be taught? Or is there just something that some guys have? Maybe it's different for every guy. I don't know.
Well, I think it's different for every guy. I really do. But I think there are guys. Jim Bedard was a coach in Detroit.
Yep.
The goalie coach in Detroit. And he did a great job convincing his goaltenders that they could be the best. Even if they weren't. He would convince them that in the playoffs, they could be the best. And Detroit, okay, Mike Vernon comes from Calgary and he wins, and Dominik Hasek, but they had some guys win Stanley Cups that weren't in that category.
Yeah, you think of, like, I mean, not negative, but like Osgood and the career he had.
Yeah.
Actually, had a remarkable career, but like multiple Stanley Cups. Like in the playoffs, he hit another level.
Yeah, that's it. And I think Jim Bedard should get credit for a lot of that. And then there's the other, like, you can win the Stanley Cup with ordinary goaltending if the other team, Antti Niemi, is a Stanley Cup winner. Antti Niemi, and who'd he be? Was it Boucher or one of those guys in Philly?
It was Philly, yeah. Well, there might have been 3 different guys at the time. It was Brian Boucher, Michael Layton. Remember, they went through a bunch.
Oh, yeah. We covered that one, and I'm thinking, well, worst goalie is going to lose this one. And it was that was the one Patrick Kane scored from the goal line, and nobody knew it was in. And it was an Antti Niemi won a Stanley Cup.
And well, I know that was before the reverse VH was born. Otherwise, maybe that goalie would have had that Patrick Kane shot. Although you probably have some thoughts on that technique as well. It's been a little overused over the years. So I want to transition back. Let's go back to, you talked about the WHA and Birmingham and the New England Whalers, and then boom, back into the NHL with from New England, Hartford. As much as the WHA was a no-brainer, what did it mean to be back in the National League?
Well, for me, by then I was almost 30 years old, and it was the transition was pretty easy, just because the last 4 or 5 years in the WHA, the competition was really good.
Right. You were ready for it.
Yeah. And once we got to the NHL, there was, I guess, myself and Al Smith were the goalies in Hartford. And it got to I played the first 15 games or something for the Whalers, and nobody thought we'd make the playoffs. And I don't think anybody thought any of the WHA teams would make the playoffs. And we did. And we got off to, after 24 games, we were 8-8-8, and nobody thought, the WHA teams. And it wasn't like expansion now, where you get to pick players off other teams. It was, you get to protect one goalie and then 2 players off your whole roster. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was ludicrous to think. And the NHL wanted to make sure that they kept the WHA inferior because, hey, we're the NHL. And why don't they look at some of the stats of the guys' WHA careers? And, that's the NHL. But we made the playoffs that year, and I got to play with Gordie Howe in his last year, and I got an assist on his last goal in the NHL.
I had that on my list to ask because it took a few years for you to get credit that, but I remember hearing that story many times sitting around over in the press box in Vancouver.
Yeah, Greg Shannon kept trumpeting it and putting it online, and give it to Cheech. That was a hashtag, give it to Cheech, and it finally came through. But Gordie was such a great guy, and 52 years old. And we talked about no goalie coaches, and Gordie was just naturally so strong and so prepared, and the Saskatchewan farmer, and such a nice guy, and yet an edge, and he could be just vicious if he wanted to be. And it was a thrill to play with he and Dave Keon. I got to play 5 years with Dave Keon with Minnesota, and then with Hartford, and towards the end of their careers. But it was just such a thrill. And then Bobby Hull came to the Hartford Whalers at the end of his career too. Bobby Hull. So there was Bobby Hull, Gordie Howe, Dave Keon, and John Garrett. It's like Sesame Street. Legend. One of these things doesn't do it.
Legends of the game, all of them, John Garrett.
Yes.
Toughest shot in practice, because we're talking about an era where, and I don't mean toughest shot in terms of stopping, but, well, maybe a little bit of both, but in terms of how you felt it, because we're talking about an era where, as you said, it's not like today where I could go out to an NHL practice and not get hurt. Now, I wouldn't stop anything, but I wouldn't get hurt.
Well, that's it. And back then, you could pick the guys that could really shoot. There'd be 3 or 4, and you'd watch the other teams play, and you'd catch up. And but then, and WHA, unlimited curves. The sticks had the boomerang sticks, and you're playing in the Chicago amphitheater, little wee bandbox, and the guys would come over the red line, and it'd be like they'd 5 feet inside the blue line and shoot the boomerang, and it would dip about 3 feet. And Bobby Hull with an unlimited curve on the stick. You go into Winnipeg, and it was a nightmare, and that sort of thing. And then everybody got to shoot really well, the new sticks and all that kind of stuff, and everybody could shoot really well. But half the guys didn't know where it was going. And that's, like you were saying, the guys you had to worry about in practice were the guys that Nick Fotillo and players like that, who could, big, strong guys that could shoot a rocket, but have no idea where it was going. You'd give it to Jerry Cheevers, you'd stand over by the post and get the 3/4 of the net. Here, hit it, and they'd still hit you. They weren't trying to, but they'd still hit you. Come on. It was... that was the nightmares of practice.
That's what I say in beer league. If they don't know where it's going, how the hell am I supposed to?
Yeah, exactly. You can't read it off the stick because they have no idea where it's going.
Exactly. How much, not to, like, the fear factor isn't there anymore, right? No. I mean, it really isn't, or it shouldn't be. How much was that a part of the position for you? Like, being able to overcome the fact that, like you said, pucks off the mask with those old masks, they broke your nose.
Well, that was it. And St. Louis, one night I'm playing in St. Louis, and Guy Chouinard takes a shot. Lars Lindgren was a defenseman, goes down to block it, goes over his pad, catches me just above the eye, form-fitting mask, my Canuck mask, and the pressure cut, 28 stitches.
Oh.
You just, that was the thing. You'd work with the kids in hockey school, and the little kids in particular, especially the 10 to 12-year-olds, you could tell, and back then you could tell, because the equipment wasn't as good. And they pull up on every shot. And, well, you don't really want to be a goalie. You should maybe do some skating drills. And you could tell the kids that had their chin on the ice and were down and in their crouch and ready, shot after shot after shot, then they've got a chance. And that was the thing, was you had to keep telling yourself, even myself as I got older and in the NHL, keep your chin on the ice. Guys would come in and just bury their head and pound it, and you say, okay, I can't be pulling up on this. I got to stay in your crouch and keep your chin on the ice.
Okay, so explain that to me, because like from a protection standpoint, pulling up on it pulls your head away from it. But when you talk about staying, like, that just kept you connected and on the puck, so you had a chance to react to it?
Exactly. You start to pull up and you lose your traction, you lose your feet. And so you can't react, and your hands too, because all of a sudden your hands aren't even, and you can't react with your hands. And so you start to pull up, and your whole body, you lose that intense prowess that, where you can't pounce one way or the other.
See, I love that. That ties to a lot of the modern tracking stuff that we're talking about today as well. Like, again, the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's funny because the way saves were made back then, like nowadays, it's, hey, the puck can't go through my chest. So if I can get my chest in the way, as much as we don't want to be blocking, like you can react into pucks in a way where trap it off the gut. You guys didn't want to take a puck off the chest. You wanted to gloves, blockers, active hands, skates, and stick because it hurt.
Yeah, and angle things because your stick blockers angle things to the corners, whereas now the equipment's designed to absorb it.
Right.
It's softer. And how many times you say, "Oh, he swallowed that one up"? Well, it hits him and it sticks to them. And I think that's the thing. Henrik Lundqvist had those pads that could kick the puck by the traffic in front and things like that. But the position has evolved to the point, and the equipment's evolved to the point where the arm pads, like we used to have bruises from October to May, and now the arm pads, and it hits and it drops. It doesn't bounce off, doesn't go to the corners or anything. It hits the arm pads and it drops. And how many times you see it hit and drop into the blocker even, just because everything's so soft that you absorb it.
Right. Greg Harrison, relationship there. Pioneers of the game from the mask. You talk about that Canucks mask is an iconic one. What was that relationship like? And you were kind of one of the leading edge guys with some of the designs. I
was one of Greg's first clients, and he worked at the Orwalton Sports Camp with me when I was playing junior in Peterborough. And
you and Jim Rutherford?
Jim Rutherford was there too. Naturally Shaky and Bobby and the Dale Talon there, and there was a whole bunch of those that era that all worked at the sports camp. And Greg was there as an instructor, I guess. He was a goaltender for a while, and he made a mask for me. A Minnesota Fighting Saint one was the first one that he made for me, and it weighed a ton. And he goes, "Oh, don't tell anybody about that one." It was thick at the top, and it kind of wrapped around, and but it got soft. It ground down, and it's not like now where. And Greg would charge, $500, and that was a lot at the time. And so teams, oh yeah, we'll get one mask. That better last you all year, baby. There's no ceremonial nights. We're not going to have a special mask for, the night of St. Patrick's Day. You're not going to have a St. Patrick's Day mask. It's your mask is your mask for the rest of the year. And he was an artist. He was a craftsman, and I mean, he does many things. Refurbishes Studebakers, and he does a lot of very artistic things. And he did masks for me all along. I remember I got traded from Quebec to Vancouver on a Thursday, and the Canucks were playing in Toronto on the Saturday. And Greg goes, "Oh, I've got an idea for your Canuck mask. Can you get it to me on the Friday?" And I said, yeah. And so I met him on the Friday, and sure enough, my Canuck mask was ready for the game Saturday night. And Richard got hurt that night, and got hit in the ear. And the All-Star game back then wasn't such a big deal. They played the All-Star game on a Tuesday night. And so Richard got hurt on the Saturday night, and we played in Pittsburgh on the next night. So I finished 3 minutes or something on the Saturday night. And then I played a game for the Canucks in Pittsburgh on the Sunday. And then Richard couldn't play, had broken eardrum. He was the only guy on the Canucks that was on the All-Star team. And they wanted to have one guy from every team. And there was nobody else in the West that was really lighting it up as a goaltender. So, we'll let Cheech go. And so I get to the NHL All-Star game with no votes in either division. Had played one game for the Canucks, and I'm representing the Canucks in the 1983 All-Star game in New York. And I'm playing with all the Oiler guys who, were really good the year before. And then the Islanders were on the other division. And so I got to play in the All-Star game and cruising along in the All-Star game. And nobody's really, it's intense compared to All-Star games now, because
especially with that Islanders,
the
Oilers rivalry kicking off.
That was it. And so we get to the third period, and the reporters have to pick the MVP. And so they have the ballots, and at the 10-minute mark, they fill out the ballots. And nobody else. I'm the guy. I'm going to win the car. And I'm driving a Nissan Micra at the time. And there's a Firebird, with the eagle back in the 83, the big eagle on the hood and everything. Yeah. And so Gretzky comes out and scores goal. And that makes it 4-2. And then goes off. Next shift comes out, gets another one, 5-2. Now, he ends up 4 shifts in a row, scores 4 goals, and they rip up the ballots, and everybody's ready to ballot. Gretzky stole my car. That was it.
Gretzky stole. You should have. We have John Garrett, NHL All-Star. It should have been John Garrett, NHL All-Star MVP. If not for Gretzky and whoever let in those goals at the other end. We need
Pelly Lindbergh.
We got to blame Pelly on that one too.
Yeah. You're going to blame the dead. You're going to blame the dead guy.
Yeah.
Aren't you just so sensitive? Blame the Nick. Oh, that's not nice.
No. Well, I think Gretzky in an All-Star game format probably had an advantage there. Those years, Vancouver, Quebec. Darren Millard, our host of this podcast, is going to kill me. I know you've told it many times, but maybe there's some people that haven't heard it. He said, I had to ask you about Quebec and the Colisée and Dan Bouchard and getting thrown in there one night and maybe a Colisée dog being tucked in. You got to share that one with us.
Well, not many people have seen the Colisée because they have a new building, Videotron or whatever it's called in Quebec City. It's a beautiful building. But the Colisée was an old building where you came out of the dressing room and you took a right and you didn't go right to the bench. It was a hallway sort of thing. And then the bench was, to the right. And so the spare goalie sat behind the bench in the hallway, close enough to the bench, but behind the bench. Yeah. So nobody could see it. You were down underneath. So the game's going along and it's like 2-1. And I'm pretty safe. Dan is playing pretty well. And I think this is great. René Lacasse, who was a trainer at the time, and he every now and then he loved the hot dogs, best hot dogs in the league in Quebec. And he goes, "You want a hot dog?" And yeah, sure. So he gets me a hot dog, and I'm got it in my pads, and every now and then I'll turn around, pretend I'm doing something, and have a bite of the hot dog. And then Dan all of a sudden decides that they score a goal on him, and he didn't like the way the defense played it, so he just comes up, just skates off, blows by me, and goes to the dressing room. So I'm put my pads, tightening my pads up and everything. And I can't take the hot dog out because now everybody's looking at me. And so I leave the hot dog in my pads and I go out and finish the game and sit in the dressing room and wait till the guys go and, oh, wow, we lost again. So sad, just so I can take the hot dog out of my pads and get the mustard and ketchup off the socks. At least the trainer knew what was going on.
Oh, I bet you they were having a chuckle.
Oh, yeah.
So we have in the KHL, somebody's cell phone fell out of their gear, I think, last point of one season. You were just lucky the hot dog didn't come out of the gear.
Yeah. Well, you look at some of the, like San Jose, where the guys in Montreal,
They're
guys
not
on the
in
other side of the rink, and San Jose, the guys in the corner, but everybody's got a camera now, and so you can't have popcorn or anything like that. That's what the guys used to do, have popcorn.
Any advice on being a good teammate? Because like you said, at various points in your career, you were the number one. At other points, you were a backup. Is that important? I think it gets lost for kids. Like you said, the Esposito and the competition, but we see it with Calvin Pickard in Edmonton. Like those guys battle for him because he's such a good teammate. Any lessons along the way?
Eric Comrie in Winnipeg is another guy that I think that, and it's a double-edged sword because they feel for you as the underdog, but you always want to play. Like every goalie, you want to play, and yet you have to accept the fact that okay, this is my role. Glenn Healy was one of the best backups because he accepted the role and yet compete in practice, and the backup goalie, you have to stay out with the guys who aren't playing, and every optional practice you should, if you're a good teammate, and I think most of the guys do, is if you're the backup goalie and they're on the road and it's an optional practice and there's going to be 4 or 5 guys out there, they want to target. So get your ass out of bed and go and you're there, and they appreciate that. And you stay till the last guy leaves, and that's part of your job. And I think the players really appreciate that. And you're on the bench and you're involved. I think that's one of the things that you lose now with some of the rinks with the goalies are so big that they can't sit on the bench. We used to have to sit on the bench and open the door, close the door, and you're always chirping. You were chirping along with the other guys, the other team, because they were right there. But now they're back. They're with the 5 coaches and there are 8 trainers that are there, and so you can't really get involved in all the goings on the ice. Whereas you used to be able to do that. Don't step on my hands. Watch the door.
But you can sneak a hot dog.
Yes. In certain rinks, you can get the hot dog.
John Garrett, this has been fantastic. Thank you. I've taken up more time than I said I would, but I really appreciate you. I'm kind of famous for that, so my apologies. But really, so many great stories, so many great insights, some things that still hold true today for the parents and young goalies that listen to this podcast all the time. Some lessons as well. Thank you so much. You said
my pleasure.
Few
my
games.
pleasure.
Where can we catch you this year? Yeah,
Darren still plays beer league goalie. And Darren had way better masks than I ever had. He used to parlay his presence at Sportsnet to get a free mask every now and then, and he'd have the best mask. But his technical side of the goaltending, like if you don't see the guy shooting, but you know which way he shoots, what way do you cheat? You always cheat to the way the guy shoots, right? Left-hand shot, you cheat to your right because chances are it's going to go. It's harder to shoot across the body. Little things like that. I used to tell Darren, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know. That's why you're still playing beer league and you never played above junior B, Darren. That's why.
Well, okay. So your first game this year is down in Vegas.
Yes.
I hate to tell you this, but he's parlayed his relationship with InGoal into some pretty sweet masks and gear for his Vegas practice goalie duties that he still fulfills down there.
Oh, man. He always drags me whenever I'm in Vegas. I'm on his pregame show. And it's always in the corner over by the canteen. So I can grab a hot dog there before I go on with Darren.
I love it. Well, we look forward to seeing you on Hockey Night in Canada again this year. I'm glad to see that, glad that you're staying connected with the game and still doing the broadcasting. You're missed here in Vancouver, and I look forward to hopefully catching you at a rink this season as well. John, thank you so much for the time today.
Well, thank you, Kevin, and I'm sure we'll run into each other somewhere.
I look forward to it.
Okay, thank you.
John's never even seen me play, but he's made a career. Well, small part of his career, making fun of me. We spent a lot of time together, and we used each other during the chaos of working at Sportsnet during the early years, where things were crazy and fun and goofy, but a little unscripted. We were each other's voice of reason, which is kind of scary on both sides.
I love it. Well, he's going to be. You know what, Darren? I think you need to schedule a practice session with the Vegas Golden Knights to make sure you're in there, because John's going to be there coming up, I think, this week for the second end of a Hockey Night in Canada broadcast, back to back. He is doing the late games several times this year, and I think Vegas is on that tab sometime here in October. So make sure he gets out. Maybe InGoal will provide him with a video camera to record it, and he can do a critique after.
Doesn't use forks a lot, I can tell you. How about the hot dogs in the pads?
Such a good story. That's
not amazing. He also had that great period where he wore his sweater super long and it covered up his 5-hole. Little outside the box thinking, totally illegal, but not illegal because there wasn't a rule against it. But he wore such a long sweater and it was wide, and it would catch pucks back when pants were a little thinner, a little narrower.
How about Gretzky screwing him out of the All-Star game car? I've heard that story before, but hearing it again still broke my heart, especially the way he described the car. It just, he paints this picture, and that's what he does so well in the broadcast. He paints a picture. I saw that car as he was describing it, and I can envision the disappointment as Gretzky took it over.
He wasn't even supposed to be there to begin with. And then he's that close to having the keys.
How far have we come in terms of the NHL, where basically the All-Star game was, we need somebody from this team, and the goalie that we pick can't make it, so let's take you, and you just got to this team. You're an all-star. Hey, now, you're an all-star. But he played well.
I've got one of his masks, the Vancouver Canuck version, in my office, in my studio. And I've got a special signed picture from Cheech doing a great 1-foot stance while he's stopping a puck. Not great positioning, but it's a great inscription from my buddy John Garrett. Good times today, and he would have enjoyed watching Ned, or that puck bounce off the post on Dustin Wolf. Just something a little more interesting, something out of the box, quirky. It would have fit perfectly with John Garrett. What do you guys have planned for the week? What's going on with you, Hutch?
I think it's back to the office this week, Darren, because I've been on the road for the last 2 weeks, enjoying time in Quebec, Ontario, and on the prairies, hanging out in Moose Jaw for a week. So it has been a wonderful time, talking to lots of coaches, lots of parents, and getting to watch my kid play as well. And now I'm back in the office playing catch up. So that's my week.
See, there's your catch up reference. Woody?
I had to have a catch-up reference.
Yeah.
My week is basically going to be spent cheering for the Mariners. Perhaps in person at one point. Hint, hint. It will also be, hopefully I can see well enough to go. And I guess basically trying to work off all the turkey and pumpkin pie that I'll be eating tonight, because it is also, of course, Hutch is holding up a Blue Jays World Series thing. See, we need one of those in Seattle. Listen, it's going to be a week of trying to work off the turkey and pumpkin pie, because it is Thanksgiving up here. In addition to the great savings at the Hockey Shop Source for Sports, it is time to binge eat to the point where your pants don't fit.
1992, 1993, 2025. Let's put it together. Okay, Hutch, let's do this.
Touch them all, Vladdy.
Hutch 'em all, Vladdy.
Touch them all.
Yankees lose.
That was so good.
We'll talk to you guys next week on InGoal Radio, the podcast. Go Jays.